And if you'll stand by just a sec. If you'll stand by just a sec. Okay, Angela, we've got it.
All right, good evening. Welcome to the Salem Human Rights Commission meeting. My name is Angelo Arredondo. I'm from Ward 2. My pronouns are he and him, and I am the chair of the commission. Just as a reminder, whenever you speak, please say your name so that the interpreters can identify who's speaking. As always, let's do introductions, popcorn style. I'll pass it to somebody, and then you pass it to somebody else, and so on. And we'll start with Kathy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Ostrand-Poncham. I'm a member of the Human Rights Commission. I live in South Salem. I will pass it to Amelia.
Hi, my name's Amelia Knight. My pronouns are she, her. I am in Ward 4, and I am a member of the Human Rights Commission, and I will pass it to David Reinhold.
Hi, my name's David Reinhold. I'm a member of the commission. I'm a resident of Polk County. My pronouns are he and him, and I'll pass it to Krista.
Hello, I'm Krista Gallagher. I use she and her pronouns. I'm the vice chair of the Human Rights Commission, and I live in Ward 4, and I'm going to pass it to Tricarico.
Sorry, I dropped my phone. This is Tricarico. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I'm a resident of Ward 2 and a member of the Human Rights Commissioner. And I'll pass it to Kathy. Have you gone yet? Oh, darn. Let's see. Joaquin, do you want to go?
Be happy to. All new faces here tonight for me. My name is Joaquin, and I'm a resident of Ward 8, West Salem. I was born in Salem, have lived my whole life in Willamette Valley, and I'm currently an undergraduate student at Yale, and I've applied to join the commission. And so I'm here to learn, to meet all of you, and see what a commission meeting looks like, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Oh, and I have probably Northeast neighbors, Lynn. I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Lynn, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. I think you might still be on mute.
I'm muted. I apologize. My name's Lynn Takata. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm with Northeast Neighbors.
Thank you. I think that leaves me and Deb, and my name is Gretchen Bennett, and I'm on the staff team at the Mayor and City Manager's Office, serve as a liaison to the commission. And Deb.
Sorry, I'm on a laptop, so I'm having difficulties. My name is Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with Salem Police. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the liaison between the police department and the Human Rights Commission. Sorry.
Angela here. Thank you for introductions. Oh, does anybody did anybody say something?
No, I forgot. I was supposed to pass it to somebody. So I think I was supposed to pass it to you, Angelo.
Oh, no worries. My internet's being kind of weird, so it's kind of delayed. Okay, so thanks everybody for the introductions. Do we have any public comment tonight, Gretchen?
Not that's been received outside this meeting, and I am just delighted Lynn is here, and Lynn may opt to communicate under our action item 4A, or may also want to comment here. Lynn, we would leave that up to you, certainly.
Thank you for putting the item on the agenda. I'm happy to wait until it comes up under 4A. Gretchen, thanks for the opportunity.
So no public comment, Angelo.
Okay. I think we can move on to our consent calendar, which is the approval of agenda and approval of minutes. And as always, if I can get a motion and a second.
This is Kathy. I'll move to approve the agenda and the minutes of our March meeting.
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? I don't think so. All right, motion passes. Agenda and minutes. All right, I think we move on to our action and our discussion items. And that starts with 4A, which is prevention of hate and bias incidents.
Yes, that's right. The unfortunate reality is that there was some significant graffiti in a neighborhood, and I'll certainly invite Lynn or Lieutenant Aguilar to speak to the specifics of that, but it led to some important questions that I know this commission has wrestled with in the past and previous commissions around how do you stop this from happening? What are some steps that communities can take around the prevention of biased and hateful graffiti in a community, especially in a community when so much wonderful things have been done to build up such positiveness in the neighborhood. I think tonight's conversation can be around what we know can be effective and what are some doable, actionable things that we think we can take as community members. So I think the idea is to first understand what happened and kind of what's been undertaken so far. I reached out to the Parks Department and I have their update as well for you. And then we can move into sort of some brainstorming and problem solving about what are some steps can be taken. But I would invite Lynn, I don't know if you'd prefer to share, or Lieutenant Aguilar, about what happened that kind of brought us together.
I can start because I witnessed it. So we had just gotten rid of some very significant graffiti in the park, which isn't usual for us. And then there was some slight awareness that there were some small marks. I think it was Tuesday evening. It was maybe the 29th, but I believe it was March 30th. I was in the park and there was homophobic, racist, and anti-Semitic graffiti. It was quite specific and it was horrible. So, and you know, we had people wanting to run home and get paint to cover it immediately. The people in the park were quite disturbed and still are. So I just wanted to come here to learn, best practices and how we can, are there programs that are effective in schools? Obviously removing the graffiti as soon as possible is ideal. So I've gotten permission from the police department to have kind of a neighborhood kit of graffiti remover understanding that it all has to be documented and so on. But I'm here to listen and learn to the commission and just see if there's any ideas that people have.
Thank you. And maybe just to help kick that off, I know there's some fundamental things that we know and understand. And you're right, I understand the quick removal is one aspect. Another aspect are strategies like being vibrant and active community members utilizing the park. And that's certainly true of your neighborhood. You have annual festivals and it's an actively used park. So I think that box is perhaps also checked as well. There's also crime prevention strategies, which I'm sure Lieutenant Aguilar can talk about, things like lighting, that can help prevent crime, keeping landscaping under control so that people don't do things. And then you get into the broader questions that I know we've grappled with as a commission around the prevention and the response. And there's categories within that. Some believe very wholeheartedly in the work around coming together as different groups of people, because once you can know a person as a person, there's great progress that can be made towards a person examining their own biases. There's work that can be done in training and, like you said, education. And I know the school district has a whole array of approaches through their diversity and equity office that they're working on with youth and young people in the Salem-Keizer schools around understanding. So there's also I think there's the very specific nuance of how you are in conversation with an individual person in a way that can create space for people to change. You know, I've read some interesting research about the confirmatory bias that many will bring to a conversation. So if a person has a bias and then hear alternate information, are they hearing that in a way that allows them to hear and move their perspective as opposed to lock in further their same perspective? And so I know there's nuance in communication approaches that can help either lock a person into their original bias versus help them hear and be accessible to thinking in new ways. So there's science in the specifics of communication styles. Many years ago, we used to bring together people with potlucks just to help create connectivity, going back to that first idea. And I know the Salem Multicultural Institute is bringing back World Beat this year. And I know that was part of the intention of the programming at World Beat. It was born out of some racial and biased incidents that led to, we need to come together as peoples, and that's one of the approaches. But I just say all that just to warm everybody up. I know people here have thoughts and have read things and taken trainings, and so be interested to see what folks think about this.
This is Kathy. One of the things that we've talked about in response to an incident that happened at a park out south was having some sort of signage put up in parks that would indicate, the things that we want to be a welcoming and inclusive neighborhood. Hate speech and harassment is not allowed. I don't know if where that landed. Was that I seem to think that was maybe on a list of recommendations from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, but I don't know if that was something, how far that got. But we've also been talking as a commission, specifically on the LGBTQI+ Intersectional Rights Task Force, about a safe spaces program that could extend to the parks as well, that would have some signage and visible indications of what it might be, safe spaces and where to go and who to report to if there's things of concern happening. And I wonder if something like that might be helpful in the parks too, to address what's happened in your neighborhood.
Kathy, this is Gretchen. Thank you. I'm looking at my notes from our parks administrator, and I don't see anything about signage. She clarified that they've added additional lighting in the past and identified some cameras. And I understand cameras and I think, and she understands that SPD has increased patrols and presence in the location in the past to try to help with prevention. But I don't see anything about signage. I agree that I believe that was a part of the SPRAB, the Salem Park and Recreation Advisory Board recommendation, but I don't recall the specifics of that, or if they were knowing about our Safe Spaces program and anticipating that. So that's a great question. I could check in on signage. I always think about the efficacy too, not to discount that idea, but to bring a contrary opinion. If someone's going to do graffiti like that, will the sign deter, or will it bolster a rebellious instinct? Or is that irrelevant? Is the sign for the park users to help communicate to everyone who's there what the intent of the community is, even if it doesn't stop a person from committing an act, it communicates to the rest of Salem our values. So I don't know.
I think it
So
does both. Yeah. Go ahead, Lynn.
No, I apologize. This is Lynn. I'm still getting used to the format of your meeting. I apologize, Krista. So that is one thing that our board proposed. I was trying to find the two ideas that we were tossing around to put on the community board. We didn't want to put anything that was negative. Some people wanted to put some threatening things up. That is not what we wanted. And our board likes the idea of like a porcelain enamel sign that if it is graffiti, because all the graffiti has covered every sign in the park. So we fully anticipate that this sign will be graffitied no matter what kind of sign it is. But like a welcoming, positive sign, welcoming everyone, you know, to the space and letting them know that everyone is accepted. So we like that idea. We were thinking about putting in some design elements that would be, you know, warm and welcoming, just to let people know this is a safe space and everyone is welcome. I was trying to look for the quote, but I could not find it. The board after the graffiti went up was covered with pictures from children. So until the windstorm. So that was lovely. You know, just to have these very positive images from children completely covering the board. But yeah, so you think this is from a recommendation possibly from SPRAB?
I'll have to look back. I know I've seen it in writing somewhere. I can look back and see where I remember seeing it from, but I know we've talked about it as a group, and it might be in our conversations about the Safe Spaces program, it might be an extension of that. But I have missed the last meeting of that group, so I'm not sure where those conversations have gone. I don't know if anybody else on that group remembers or knows if that's part of the discussion at this point. But I can look back after this meeting. I'll look back and if I find something, I'll send it on to Gretchen that has that in it.
I know, Lynn, that everyone is disappointed to hear what happened. I don't think we acknowledged that at the beginning. You know, on behalf of the commission, just so sorry that that had happened too. I know that's upsetting to people who are there.
I mean, I have a history of, the community where I was living in the 60s had a cross burning. It's just horrible to see this thing. I found the quotes that we were tossing around, and they're adapted from some other text. So one was, we are a caring community, welcoming and respecting of diversity. And then the second one was, we recognize and affirm the inherent dignity and worth of all people. So those were a couple ideas that we were tossing around.
I know another part of what we think works. I've read research around trying not to glamorize the names and the situations of people who end up being arrested or confirmed as the perpetrators of the crime. You don't want to glorify that and sort of inspire copycats who might be interested in that same type of attention, like you want to hold the people accountable, but do that in a way that doesn't have a giant splash on social media and in the general media, like this is the person and this is their name and this is what led them to do it, because it could inspire followers and repeats. And so there's wisdom in how it's communicated once someone held accountable to, that we understand can prevent or reduce the possibility of copycatting.
an uptick of graffiti after that also included some hate speech, but we got rid of it right away. And I think that that's the key, is you don't give people, and I say we, because I don't know who removed it. I didn't ask anybody to remove it. So I went to go look at it, and it was gone. So the neighbors just can't take it anymore.
It's too bad that you all have to keep doing that, but at the same time, I think, staying on top of it, exactly the right thing to do, so that they don't, it's not going to change the feel of the neighborhood and the nature of the neighborhood, I guess. Yeah. But I like the quotes that you shared. I think those are good.
Thank you.
We'll need to keep you posted on the Safe Spaces program that you heard Kathy mention that's under development, one of our task forces. The idea is to have some visible signage in locations and have the people who manage or operate those spaces commit to kind of some pre-training and some understanding and some approaches to try to help spaces be safer. That's all still under development. So I'm being a little general at the moment, but we have a task force thinking through what all of those pieces would be and collecting resources that could go on a web page that would help people who manage spaces with accessing information. Well, I don't know if anybody has others.
You're just
Oh, there you
checking.
go.
Can you guys
Yeah.
hear me?
We can now, Angela. We couldn't when you came on your camera.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm leaving my camera off then because for some reason it's not wanting to work with my camera. So I apologize because of that. But I know, so is this a recurring thing that's happening? Like, does it keep happening over and over again?
This is Lynn. We've never had hateful graffiti. We've had graffiti from other groups that has preceded some shooting in the park, and it is a different kind of graffiti. It's not frequent. So the end of March was the first time that we had ever seen that type of graffiti in the park. And then there was a little bit more graffiti that still had some of the hate words in it that came right away. But I would say the graffiti was removed very, very quickly within a few hours of daybreak. So the children after school didn't get a chance, thankfully, to see it, because it's right by a elementary school.
I'm sorry if I missed this earlier. Which park was this?
Englewood in Northeast Salem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Angela here. Thank you, Lynn, for the explanation. So I'm assuming that graffiti in itself is a crime, correct, Lieutenant Aguilar?
Yes, correct. The graffiti itself would be, the specific crime would be criminal mischief.
And what would be, so is there a process towards the removal of graffiti, towards catching the suspects? What's the process with graffiti wise?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Generally, catching someone who applies graffiti is very difficult. It's generally done at night or in areas that maybe there aren't a lot of witnesses or cameras. I can say in this particular instance, we have developed a potential suspect because we have a few investigative tools on our side. So there is the potential that we could hold someone accountable for this particular graffiti incident. But the first step is reporting it. So if it's just graffiti, and I say just graffiti, not that it's not bad, but if it's not hate filled, if it's maybe just symbols that aren't related to bias or hate, we would ask people to report that to the graffiti hotline through the police department. When there's hate or bias attached to the graffiti, so let's say it's a hate symbol or hate language, we want to make sure that we document that, because if it's on someone's property, it would be a bias crime. If it's on city property, it would not fall under the bias crime statute, but it still would be a bias incident, and as well as the crime of criminal mischief. So we would ask that people call the non-emergency phone number so that a police officer can take a bias incident report on that. And then if there are follow-up investigation that is possible, then that would happen. So looking to see if there are witnesses, if there are cameras or other types of tools where the graffiti was applied, that would give us an idea of who might have applied the graffiti. So that, and then it just takes on the usual criminal investigation, trying to identify the suspect, talking to the suspect, gathering evidence, and then potentially making an arrest if possible. So right now, right now in that investigation, like I said, we do have a suspect, so we're still in the initial beginning stages of that process.
And you're here. Thank you, Lieutenant. Anybody else have any more questions? Lynn, I don't know if you want to say something else. I welcome more discussion.
This is Lynn. The question I have is, what types of education is being done in the public schools, and is there any evidence to show that any of that has been effective? My experience with younger children as a teacher is that a lot of times they're repeating words. They don't know what the meaning is. You know, they don't know the historical meaning. They're repeating something because they get a reaction. But is there something happening with Salem Kaiser that has been helpful at all? And that's my last question. We've taken up a lot of time, and I'm appreciative for the opportunity.
This is Gretchen. I don't know if anyone else has further information in our group. And I certainly can't speak for the Salem Kaiser Public Schools or the associated private schools in the area, but I know that from conversations with staff, from looking at their website, and as being a parent in the system, there's curriculum that runs all the way through related to diversity, equity, inclusion, the communication of values, the communication about interacting with one another in ways that are welcoming and inclusive. And that ranges by the age, of course, all the way through. And I know they've, in recent years, just in the past, the 9 years I've been at the city, they've had committees that pull together people across the district, including students, to examine and look for other evidence-based practices that they can bring in to add to that. So I know there's a robust effort underway, but I can't speak in much more detail about that, but I don't know if other people have information about that.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, when I was a student at the school district, I was part of the equity committee, and we talk about inclusion and all that. But I know that those committees you have to volunteer for. So again, I couldn't speak to if there's things being done in the classroom, but I do know that programs like that do exist. Okay, and also, Lynn, no need to apologize. This is what we're here for, and we appreciate you for coming to the meeting.
Am I allowed a comment? I know I'm not on the commission, but am I allowed?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Joaquin. I will say too generally, and kind of in my experience doing community organizing in Salem and in Oregon and elsewhere, is that one of the problems with hate speech and hate symbols is that often becomes the narrative of the community. So if you are from a marginalized background and say you're new to the community or not well acquainted with the community, that becomes the image of, and that becomes your sense of belonging. It's kind of confined and narrow to this one incident of hate and bias. And so the antidote to that is to have another narrative and a show of support from the community. And kind of to your point about schools are fundamentally, yes, centers of education, but they're centers and hubs of community. And I don't know, but you could have a community conversation around an event at schools or around a community that maybe was indicted in the hate speech or something like that. That might be a rallying cry for the community in terms of support and inclusion and a counter narrative of belonging for those that were impacted by the hate speech that was kind of graffitied onto the park infrastructure. And so I think the response to hate speech is love speech and inclusion and visibility of that, because if that's not visible, if that's not known by those of us who are from minority communities, then that's not the narrative that we internalize and feel. So that'd be my general comment.
This is Lynn. Thank you both and everyone for this feedback. I think the love speech and making that visible is important, because although the graffiti was removed relatively quickly, there were people that saw it. So thank you.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you again, Lynn. And then Joaquin, you're feel free to jump in if you want to. Like, I'm pretty open to discussion from guests as well. Okay, any more discussion on 4A? Okay, and then Lynn, that's everything you have to say, correct? I don't want to cut you off.
No, this is Lynn. I'm again grateful for the opportunity and the ideas that have been suggested. So thank you.
You'll hear, yeah, and thank you for coming by. And then feel free to stick around if you want to. If you have to leave, it's okay with me as well. Okay, I think we can move on to 4B, which is a Chapter 97 recommendations. And Gretchen, if you can take over that. If not, I can also take over.
Well, sure, I'd be happy to. For those of you who are newer or not with us back in December, you might remember that the commission under Tricarico's leadership with the subcommittee developed recommendations asking City Council to make some amendments to Chapter 97 to explore that. Those recommendations were provided to City Council. City Council voted to accept those recommendations and directed staff to examine the approach to amend Chapter 97, I'm sorry, to achieve those objectives. And now we have back the initial analysis from our legal department about that. Both the initial recommendation from the commission and then the analysis from our department was attached in your meeting materials. And so tonight, I think we're hoping to have some discussion and conversation about that, and then also acknowledge and perhaps think about one of the things the commission had wanted to do prior to everything being finalized is have the chance for people, for advocates or people with lived experience to have a chance to review the definition. And so I wanted to check in on ideas about how to accomplish that objective. So again, so the council directed staff, they accepted your recommendation, voted for your recommendation, directing staff to analyze. So what would we need to do to change the city's Salem Revised Code in order to accomplish the objectives? And so that draft work is back. We're pausing here with this step to have a chance to hear what you all think, what questions and concerns there may be. Also to figure out how to bring in advocates and people with lived experience. Then we would formulate any feedback that you may have or questions, and I would route that back to our city attorney who did that work, who then could address those issues, apply the ideas, or maybe, we'll see. It'll depend, I think, on what you say. But once we complete that work and then he completes that work, it would come back to City Council for formal action, because the council is who has the authority to officially change the Salem Revised Code. So if that makes sense in terms of where we are in that process. So yeah, I think tonight is a chance for folks to maybe share observations, questions, feedback on the analysis from the attorney.
This is David. I do have a question. On bullet point 5, it says this could likely increase staff and commission's workload. What would that be? What would the workload increase be?
Forgive me, I'm sorry. So it would be anticipating complaints and reports in this additional area that pre-24 wasn't listed in the code. And so maybe people currently experience discrimination, but don't report it in to the city's Human Rights Commission, not seeing housing status as being articulated. So they might figure that's not something the commission pays attention to. And so we could receive an increase in reports and an increase in requests to assist with those sorts of situations. And then if there's situations that would rise to the level of the legal department, it could include their resources as well. If there's something that we can't resolve through our informal approaches, and it's of a nature that looks like it could really be a violation of the code, our next step would be consulting with the attorney around, are there appropriate steps to take in municipal court? So it has that potential. I've certainly never turned anybody away who's called. I've certainly talked with people who were unsheltered, who've experienced discrimination over the years, and I've never turned anyone away and always just assisted them, even if it's not written in the code, just because we want all people to feel comfortable in Salem. But we don't know what that would mean to have it listed in the code, if that would generate lots of new reports. And so it's not, that's meant to be a neutral statement just to acknowledge that. It's like, this has the potential to be something new or different. I might add the point about bully that Dan makes in the document. Right now, we have a couple of resources available to us at the state level. The formal process of the Bureau of Labor and Industries is a big tool for people who've experienced significant discrimination, and that tool would not be available in these situations because it's not part of the state's statute. So we're just acknowledging this one's a bit different. It doesn't have the same resources that the other ones do.
This is Kathy. Angelo, how do you want to, I have a few comments, but I don't know if you want me just to jump right in or if you wanted to approach this differently.
Yeah, Angela here. Go ahead, Kathy. Maybe with your comments, we can generate more discussion.
Okay. So on the recommended action to add to the code that it shall be unlawful for a person to discriminate against any individual in the provision of renting, buying, or selling of real estate, provision of public accommodations or employment on the basis of housing status. I mean, that is in and of itself, that's fine, but what I don't see is any addition of housing status in the intimidation parts of the code, which would imply, bring up the possible bias crimes. This is only applying to employment, real estate, and public accommodations. And so that was something that I thought was missing. And the other piece of it, in the current code, there's some language around the policy of the city to eliminate discrimination, and recognizing that it poses a threat to the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Salem. Maintaining peace and good government, and that every individual has an equal opportunity to participate fully in the life of the city. And that language would not apply to housing status the way that this recommendation is set up, at least the way that I understand it. And so that was a question, is in our prior discussions, I thought we had kind of anticipated both that the intimidation and bias crime provisions would apply, and that there would be a little more explanation about why we're adding, or why we're recommending adding housing status. I don't know if that makes sense. And Gretchen, I'd be happy to put my comments in writing too, if that would be helpful to pass along to other staff.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. That's sweet of you, because I would probably need that, because as I interpret it, this addition, the recommendation addition, would kick in those other parts of Chapter 97. I think he is just, as I understand it, it's just important to lay that entire sentence out, as opposed to just add the two words into the long list, to make it expressly clear that here at the city, this is a problem. So I had understood the whole chapter ends up applying to housing status, but I don't want to be wrong, and I'm not a lawyer. So if you wouldn't mind writing that, I can pass that to him, and we could always invite him to a future meeting if it looks like that would be helpful.
Well, and I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. I mean, I may be misinterpreting it, but I'm just not seeing it in the document that was attached to the meeting notice. And so that would be helpful. I think those were my primary comments about the housing status specifically. I have comments about the sexual orientation definition too, but I don't know if we want to move on to that yet, or if we want to finish talking about housing status. Angela, do you have a preference?
Angela here. Yeah, I'd like to hear more comments on this section first, and then we can move on to the other ones.
Okay.
So I'm going to open discussion to commissioners, guests, anybody who wants to jump in.
This is Tricarico. I just wanted to say that I agree with Kathy that I'd like to know how the additions to Chapter 97 would interact with other parts of the code, because we're not really hearing complaints about, people being excluded from real estate or anything like that. It's more like the individual crimes that we're hearing reports of. So I'd like to know if those amendments would include that.
This is Gretchen. Thank you. I made that note. I think that public accommodations would drive in, and so it would be a yes on any sort of space that is supposed to be a place where people can be, like if you walk into a coffee shop or a grocery store, or you're on a sidewalk or a park. Of course, all of those are in that broad category of places of public accommodation. And we could also be hearing of situations in an employment arena if a person applies for a job and the employer bases decisions solely on housing status, as opposed to maybe specific things like that if they have questions about if the person can meet the job duties of the position and the expectations and the employee manual things, that's one thing, but solely on housing status is quite another. And so it's housing, places of public accommodation and employment are those big buckets in 97. And my understanding is that it applies to all of those, but public accommodation seems to be the most common one I hear about. But that doesn't mean that's the reality, but that's just anecdotally what I hear the most about.
This is Kathy again. And I guess what I'm looking at is there's a section that applies, it's titled Intimidation, and it talks about it being unlawful to tamper or interfere with someone else's property, or to subject another to offensive physical contact, or to publicly insult. Those types of things, I think, would be important to make sure that housing status is included in those types of things as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we've certainly heard, like I remember people talking about their stuff getting messed with. You know, if they're unsheltered and fall asleep and they wake up to their stuff being messed with, is this what we're talking about? Lieutenant Aguilar may have input for me into the intimidation statutes historically been interpreted as hate or bias. So again, we're just talking about, okay, in this case, hate and bias as it relates to housing status and your stuff getting tampered with, is how, just like if someone's tampering with your stuff and it's relating to your race, in this case, if it's someone's tampering with your stuff and it relates to your housing status.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So if the housing status was added as a protected class under that city code, then yes, if somebody were to tamper or interfere with their property, and we can prove that the motivation in part, at least in part, was because of that person's belonging to that protected class, then yeah, then that would fall under that criminal statute. The difficulty that we have, not difficulty, but so a little bit of the difficulty is that so that intimidation statute used to be what mirrored the state statute. So it used to mirror it. Now, if you read it, the state statute changed a little bit with, I think it was Senate Bill 577 a few years ago. So if you're going to look at that statute as far as the criminal side, it might be worth looking at to see how does it really mirror the state statute. So that includes, like, I can't recall the SRC language. We added, the state added transgender as a protected class. And I don't recall if SRC includes transgender. And then it also cleaned up some other language about how many people have to be involved in a particular crime in order for it to be at a certain felony level. So it might be worth, if you're going to look at it, to take a look at it and see how can we have it better mirror the state statute. And then there are limited city code violations that we are allowed to take to the jail. So that might be part of the discussion, is that if we look at this and we decide that intimidation is something that, if we have probable cause to arrest somebody and we really want to make sure that we can take that person into physical custody and take them to jail, then that would be, we would have to start a conversation with the county just to make sure that that's something that they would be open to adding to their list of city code violations that they will accept into jail. So right now, if somebody were to violate the intimidation statute, we could arrest them by giving them a criminal citation, but we couldn't physically take them into custody and take them to jail just because the jail has so many other folks are taking. For city codes, they really try to take just a top like 5 or 6. And right now, intimidation is not one of those. So it might be worth looking at that and maybe even retitling it. I mean, intimidation, it used to be intimidation because that was what the state charge was, but it really doesn't fit with what the crime is. That's why the state charge was changed. So it might be a good time just to look at that too.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on this particular section? Angelo, oh, go ahead.
Angelo here. So what would be the next step on this? Because I hear that we need a little more of maybe review or change, or so what would be our next step on this?
Thank you. My thought with everything we've heard this evening is to circle back with our city attorney and ask either for some revised clarification in the memo or invite participation at a future meeting together. That's my thought, including the suggestions Lieutenant Aguilar had as well. What do you think? That's what's making sense to me. And then maybe once we get it to where the city staff and the Human Rights Commission thinks, okay, this is where we like it and what we understand, then we'd be in a good position to communicate out, maybe invite people with lived experience and invite advocates to come. But it seems like first we want to make sure we've got a common understanding and that it reflects the intent.
Angela here. Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have a preference on how we want to do this? Do we want to invite, people that are quote unquote in charge of this, or how would you want this to do? Kathy, Krista, other members?
I think it would be helpful to get some clarification. This is Kathy, sorry. To get some clarification from the city attorney about, is that intent, do those provisions apply to housing status, or, am I reading it wrong, or is maybe there a piece missing to have that dialogue before moving on to pull in other people? I think it makes sense to me.
I agree, Christine. I'm having my camera off a lot tonight. I have allergies, so I was just keeping that off. But I do agree. It would be nice to seek that clarification first.
So Angela, I also had a couple of comments about the other parts of the recommendation or the proposal. Do you want me to go ahead and move into that now, and we can see if that should all be the same process for all of it?
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, let's. I would like to just move on. go down. Do we have any comments on 9785?
So I did look at that one, and I think it addresses what we were recommending, which was to take out a couple of the provisions that would potentially result in someone being evicted based on gender identity or sexual orientation. It goes a little bit further than that because I think it takes out the entire section to be consistent with state and just be consistent with state law. We didn't look at the task force didn't look at the other parts of that section, so I think it's okay, but it's a little bit more than what we had looked at.
Angela here. Yeah, I see Tricarico has thumbs up. Yeah, I agree. I think it just scratch it. It just removes it, right? Outright. Is that what it does?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and I have no issues with that. I don't know if anybody else has any issues with that with 9785. Okay, hearing none, I think our next section is on gendered language. Any comments on that?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tricarico has their hand raised, I think. Or no, I'm sorry, that's my cursor as a hand for some reason in front of the picture. It looks like it's already been done, changing the pronouns. The references to he, her, and him have already been changed administratively, so I think that's resolved.
This is Gretchen. I can verify that's correct. They're able to do that at the administrative level, so they just quickly went in because they already understand that to be the intent of council, and so they've already made those changes.
Here, yeah, it looks like we agree on that one as well. Yeah, that one's good in my opinion. And then definition of sexual orientation. I think Kathy, that's the one you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I think the recommendation is problematic, but then so is the original definition. So I'm not sure where to go with this. What is on the bottom of the second page appears to be a combination of the definition of sexual orientation and gender identity, which is not what we intended at all. And if we go, I did look at the definition that's referred there in state law, and I meant to pull it up tonight and I forgot to do that. But the definition that is currently in state law at ORS 174-100-7 is the same as what's in the current city code, which is what we were saying was too narrow. And so I don't think going back to the state law definition helps us as far as what our recommendation was. We were wanting to go a little bit broader with that definition. And so I'm not sure. I know we had submitted with our recommendation a definition from the Human Rights Campaign. I don't know if that was considered and it was determined that we couldn't go with that definition. Gretchen, do you have any idea?
Yeah, his last note on the on the last page is concern about reconciling terminology that's different in the state statute and in the city code can be difficult. And if there's less understood terms or inconsistency there, that was his concern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm equipped to elaborate on the potential problems as a result of that. If we stepped out with a different definition and someone was presenting a situation, my understanding would be, for example, if our definition was different, perhaps we wouldn't kick in the state statutes and their protections as we can now. The police can cite the Oregon revised statute, for example, in certain situations that might end up being lodgeable or in the jail, or you can arrest a person and take them through circuit court and they'll charge the ORS as opposed to the Salem revised code. If there's a concern somehow that the state statute doesn't apply and our code applies, it might reduce the protections potentially, but I can't think of a way to explain that very well. So that might be another one to go back and circle. I know in general
Okay.
he's looking for consistency
Mhm.
and no ambiguity, but yeah, that might be another one to go back and get some clarification on, like, well, what would the reality be? Give us a couple of examples if we did have a different definition and then a case emerged where perhaps the person's situation, you could see it made sense under the city's definition, but not the state. So kind of ask that, so what is my thought there? You ask a good point. But I'd be happy to try to get that clarification. I
Would
know
you-
go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I do have some notes typed up about the things that I mentioned tonight. I can clean those up and send them your way. Is it okay if it's not until I'm going to be out of town after this meeting? Is it okay if it's not for a few days yet, or what's the time frame on this?
Yeah, it's absolutely okay. We want to make sure we have this conversation and any other conversations the commission would want to have, connect in with advocates and people with lived experience before
Okay.
routing back. And so we can, we can just keep working it. And then once we're at a place where we've got something, then bring it forward. There's no precise deadline. So it's absolutely okay.
Yeah, this is Tricarico. I agree with that because I agree with Kathy that the definition is too narrow, and I understand we can't change state law. That's probably going to be next on my to-do list because, yeah, that law is not inclusive at all. But I would like to know what the implications are if we broaden our definition and then, how that plays out like you described, Gretchen. So thank you for looking into that.
This is Gretchen, absolutely happy to.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I agree with both Kathy and Tricarico on that matter. I just realized not everybody has this definition. Is there somebody that wants me to read it?
I think both of our guests in the room tonight should have received our full packet, if I'm not mistaken. So we had a couple of attachments on our email, and both of these documents that we're referencing were included there. Is anyone not having that at the handy? Looks like we've got it, Angelo. Everybody's got it. I sent everyone the full packet.
And you're here. Thank you. Yeah, I just realized that it would be hard to know what we're talking about without you seeing the physical, document. So thank you. Okay, any more discussion on this? So it looks like next steps is to get, just more clarification and more chances to ask questions to, I believe, the city attorney. Is that correct, Gretchen?
That's correct.
Okay, and would that be at our next meeting, or do we have a say in that, or how would that work?
I can sure check with their availability, but if that works for you all, that would be what I would suggest. That way we're all here and can have the full information.
Angela here. Yeah, is anybody opposed to having the attorney join us next meeting, or is that a good idea?
I think it's a really good idea. This is Amelia Knight, by the way. Sorry.
I think it's a good idea. This is Tricarico, since I understand that I don't think anyone here is a law expert. It would be helpful to have someone who is.
All right, Angela here. So yeah, it sounds like we are all in agreement. So Gretchen, if you can check if they can join us next meeting. If not, we'll work something out.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on the Chapter 97 recommendations for tonight? Okay, hearing none, I think we can move on to our complaints slash wait, never mind. It's bias crime update. Sorry, that's Lieutenant Aguilar.
Yes, let me bring it up really quick. So, oh, sorry. Let me turn my video on. Okay. Okay, so we had 3 bias incidents this last month. The one we already spoke of in Northeast Salem at the park. The other 2 were earlier in March. The first was on March 3rd and involved, and it was in Northeast Salem. A homeowner reported they had a pride flag that was hanging on their property outside their home and had several teenagers and older children ride by on bikes and makes yell anti-LGBTQ language at the homeowner, and then rode off. And the homeowner didn't know who the kids were, and the police did respond and weren't able to locate them. So we did document that as a bias incident. And then the second was in Southeast Salem, and it involved elementary aged children who they got into a fight, and during the fight, their one particular child was using some anti-LGBTQ language towards another child during the fight. We also did respond and located all of the kids involved and returned them to their parents. And this isn't a criminal matter. We referred it to the parents to address with the children. But it also was documented as a bias incident due to the language that was used. And those are the 3 that we had this month. So I don't know if there are any questions.
This is Amelia Knight. I have a question. Is this a normal amount of bias incidences that occur within a month, or is this lower or higher? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's, it kind of varies. Last year, it seemed like I was getting, I would say 3 was on the low side, and it was usually between like 3 and 5 bias incidents. I do find it interesting that, and I'm going to double check all my statistics to make sure I'm not missing anything, but I haven't seen any bias crimes come through yet, which is pretty rare. So I need to go back through our report writing system and make sure that they're just not getting documented properly. They're supposed to mark a box in the report to make sure it gets to me. So this 3 incidents in a month is probably kind of on the lower side, but it does ebb and flow. There are some months that in the past where we haven't had any, and some where we've had 5 or 6.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm always interested in hearing these incidents and crimes happening in Salem, and I understand that sometimes they come in waves, and that maybe this is triggered by something that happened politically in our country. And I'm just always curious to hear about this and see if we're having some kind of movement, because I'm trying to ponder up like what we could do as a community to like help lower these waves, help reduce it, especially if we see something happening in the news, like what we can do in Salem. So these are just thoughts I have. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. Sometimes we, just in the report itself, we can't always make a connection of why are we getting so many graffiti incidents that are bias related or assaults. But I think it is worthwhile to look at to say, why do we have this spike, and what was going on that could have been maybe a trigger Or maybe you had something that happened nationally, and we do get a lot of copycat type crimes where people see something hits the news waves nationally and, oh, okay. And then we see that sometimes it can have a copycat effect here. So I'm trying to think, I might be able to do something where maybe every quarter provide like a graph that just shows the like the increase or decrease in the incidents or crimes. I don't know if that would help.
I would find that really interesting, because then maybe if we see something that's happening nationally in the news, we can start taking steps to increase awareness or have positive events. And we could see if maybe these changes are potentially like lowering the rates. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me, I'll work on something, and maybe even by next meeting, give you something that we can see if it is valuable to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Amelia and Tim Aguilar. Any more questions regarding any bias crime updates? All right, thank you. Hearing none, I think we move on to our complaints / concerns of discrimination, and that's Gretchen.
You bet. I'll need, Lieutenant, I'll coordinate with you. Maybe, I think sometimes the bias incidents that come in to me and to you maybe are just distinct by the location of report. So we might want to feed in on the incident side stuff that I get too, it occurs to me.
That's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. I had just one this month, and overall that's low. I've noticed in the past, like the last 12, 14 months, we've seen a real decline in reports of discrimination and bias incidents in our space. But I had one last month, and a person indicated that their ex-partner continues to use racial slurs with them in difficult interactions that they're having. And we documented that and denounced that experience, and also ended up making a referral over to the Center for Hope and Safety, given some other indicators that the person was sharing about their interactions with the ex-partner. But that's the only report that I received during the last month.
Yeah, Angela here. Thank you, Gretchen. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, I think we move on to our 4E, which is gatherings, town halls, and visiting meetings. And Gretchen, if you can start us off with that topic.
This is Gretchen. I'd be happy to, and our Vice Chair Krista may want to jump in as well. This is a pulling forward of a conversation that you had near the beginning of the year. There was interest in trying to increase connections with community members in new and different ways. Past commissions have organized activities such as town halls or community forums, or increased attendance at other committee meetings, or other forms of outreach. And in your work plan conversations near the beginning of the year, I remember that was an area of interest for you. So this agenda item tonight is just a chance to circle back on that and see if there's particular ideas to start to think towards. I don't know if it's premature, given the BA2 variant with COVID-19 or not, if that affects things. But I know the group was interested in circling back to this topic. And so that's the purpose of this agenda item, is to kind of think about, are there themes, topics that you think would lend itself to planning some sort of broader community dialogue? And maybe it's something specific like graffiti, or it's something along the lines of what Amelia was just speaking about how does national or international or global unrest or being in an election year affect us in our daily life, and what are, having conversations about what are steps people can take, what are preventative measures, what are community building, asset building kinds of approaches, or, I don't know. But this is a carry forward of that observation that commissioners had wanted to do more in this arena in 2022. So it's just a bit of a space on the agenda for thinking about that.
Angela here. Does any commissioner want to start us off with an idea?
This is Kathy. One of the things that I was going to mention in my report out for the awareness campaign task force is we had talked at our last meeting about whether we should have a table at the Saturday market. And I know that's not a specific issue, but that's increasing presence in the community. And so this seems like an appropriate time to mention that as well.
This is Gretchen. I could give a small update. The city now, I understand, has a table at Saturday Market, I believe monthly, and my colleague was there recently and always includes our brochure and general material, and has a understanding of our work as a resource. So I know our materials were out there recently, FYI, as part of a broader City of Salem table.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I think what we discussed last time with, doing those types of events is, I think it's how people are feeling still because of COVID. I think some people are still not feeling safe to do those kinds of events. And I think that's why last time we were discussing that we might wanted to push those events to a later date. But I don't know what you guys think about that. At least that's what I remember from the last meeting. I might be wrong, but I think that's what we talked about when it came to doing those sort of events. I think we're pushing more towards, going to other meetings from other groups in the community.
I will just jump in here awkwardly. This is Amelia Knight. I would like to participate more in meetup, especially because I'm an extrovert. I am a little bit worried about COVID, as I am immune compromised, and so are members of my family. But I would like to attend remotely. I hope everyone understands.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I agree with Amelia. I think there's still a lot of meetings that are going, they're virtual. I think the majority of the meetings are virtual. So I think we can identify some of those meetings in the community. We can attend, one of us, two of us, a whole group of us, we can attend and just meet. Gretchen or any other commission member, is there any other group meetings that you'd be interested in attending? I think a better question is, Gretchen, do we have a list of other, public meetings that would be of interest?
This is Gretchen. Thank you. We have a list of organizations that we've connected with in the past, but I don't, and websites, but it's not a specific list of like, here are the upcoming meetings. I think there'd be a step in clicking on those links and seeing what folks have going on right now. So that could be a task. We could ask me to get that done before the next meeting, or if there's a volunteer that's interested in kind of clicking through and seeing, I could also set someone up with that as well. But I think that would be the next step. We're aware of organizations out there, but I'm not sure of their meeting schedule or if the meetings are public or if they're virtual. And of course, my brain is going to the organizations that work in this general arena, like maybe the Salem Kaiser NAACP, or I've started to see things from the Racial Justice Organizing Group recently, organizations that have gathered around similar interest areas. Of course, all of the city's meetings are public and online, but I don't think that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I think we're more thinking of meetings that we can be present at, because again, I can name a bunch of meetings that we can attend, like via YouTube or all that, and that's fine. I still encourage you guys to view other meetings from other groups in the community, because I think it's very important. But I think what we're discussing right now is meetings that we can actually participate and give our thoughts on. So yeah, if somebody can just do a list or just identify some of those, that would be great. And I think that would be our next step.
I know that this is Tricarico. I know that Free Fridge Salem is partnering with some folks to do a radical free market once a month. I think that would be a great event that's in person, kind of similar to the Saturday market. We could just have a table, but that it's really geared towards kind of helping the community and making connections. And I think it would be a great place to share about the HRC.
This is David. Do we have a table at the World Beat?
This is Gretchen. We traditionally have, and so that'll be something we want to confirm with folks if there's enough interest and availability of the commission to sign up to be there. But in the past we have, and commission members have taken shifts to be at the table during the event. And World Beat is live and in person this year, as you know.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I think if there's enough interest, first in World Beat, I think it'd be a good idea. I was a volunteer at the table the last time we were in person, and it was a great experience. I think we only need a couple of volunteers there, because I don't want to have, let's just say, just myself the entire day. I don't think that's productive. And so I would like, more than one person to be there. And if we could do multiple shifts, that'd be even better. And so, yeah, just start thinking about that if you want to do that. Gretchen, do we know the dates on that?
We do. I know it's the last weekend in June, some Friday night activities, and then Saturday and Sunday. But if you like, both with the Radical Free Market and with the World Beat, and maybe anything else I could find, I could send out a little list of dates and see what folks might be interested, get some initial requests for sign up.
Yeah, Angela
this is Krista. I had a comment.
Go ahead.
I think it would be a good idea for us to have a table and have more in-person events and have more visibility for people to see. And then I have a lot of people to see and hear about us. And so I really like to encourage us to try to volunteer for more in-person events if people feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah, Angela here. Thank you, Krista. About the radical free market, do we know if that's like a consistent time of the month, or does that rotate? Or because I know I've been wanting to attend one of those, but it's always on a day that I can't attend. So I was wondering if those like rotate, or is it just one specific day each month?
This is Tricarico. I think it's usually on a Saturday, and it's usually like the second Saturday, but it's changed. It hasn't been like a consistent Saturday, but it's usually a Saturday. I think if we checked with Free Fridge Salem, we could probably get a better idea of what that looks like. I think it'd be worth reaching out to them as well, just to see if they'd like to partner with us, because I think our interests really overlap. And if we aren't able to attend that particular thing, we might have other ways to partner with them.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I remember it was on a Saturday because I always have difficulty doing events on Saturdays. But yeah, if we can just contact them, and if we can help, if I can help in any other way, even if it's not attending the event, but if I can help in any other way, I would be interested in doing that. And I think, Lynn, you have a question?
Yes, I just had an invitation. So we've got the Englewood Forest Festival in Englewood Park, which we just spoke about, coming up in mid-August on August 13th. And the city will be having a variety of booths there. So it would be possible to have HLC come for a short time or the whole time. There'll be a number of city booths from neighborhood services, Clean Streams. I think the Salem Police Department has participated in the past. And I know anecdotally, there have been neighbors that have been struggling with discrimination in our neighborhood and how to deal with it. And so I think it could be very helpful for our community.
Lynn, this is Kathy. I'm sorry, I missed the date. August, what was the specific day?
It's Saturday, August 13th from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. I can send Gretchen a link that she could share.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Lynn. And please do send the link to Gretchen so that we are aware of the event. Yeah, any more discussion, events? I did note that on this section, we also have an idea of town halls, and I believe we've been wanting to do a town hall forever, like since I've joined the commission. But for some reason or another, it always
Are you saying
gets
town hall, Angelo? Sorry,
Yes,
this is the interpreter. Town hall?
No, yes, no worries. Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for the town hall, we always want to do one, and for some reason or another, we never get to it. And so, would there be any discussion, any interest on that, or would we want to wait to do that in person? Is that an event that's more suited to be in person? Any thoughts on that?
Angela, this is Kathy. What would be like on the agenda for the town hall? What would be the, in your mind, what would be our purpose in that?
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest issues, that we can't agree on a topic, because there's always a lot of topics that we can discuss, and then we're like, okay, let's discuss this, and then it gets too big. And so I think that's where we get stuck. We just don't know what to start with.
I can understand that. I think it'd be good to think about, but coming up with a more narrow topic. Yeah, we'd have to figure out exactly what we'd want to discuss and how we'd want it to go before we were able to do something like that. But I think it's a good idea to think about.
This is Krista with her hand up. Krista here. My concern is now it's getting very close to summertime, and it's very tough to plan events like town halls in the summertime. So I'm thinking maybe we should hold on that one and plan it for the fall, maybe. Also, we're seeing an increase in in-person events. And so, you know, if we can have in-person events by that time, it would be something, you know, that we could look forward to in that quarter. I think a town hall in the fall would be a good idea, and then just do some of the booths over the summer.
Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Krista. I agree. Yeah, I think the other thing with town halls is that it's an event that we're hosting. You know, compared to the other events that we're just being guests, this is an event that we would host. And I think we've been finding it difficult to how to plan it. Like, who do we invite? Do we have, you know, any guests? Because it would be a shame if we set up this event and then like nobody shows up because it's just us. And so I think that was the other difficult thing that I noticed. You know, we're planning this, so how do we plan it? So I think that was the other one. So if we can, you know, move town hall to the fall, to the winter, I think we would have more time to discuss it, and it would be beneficial. Okay, so I think for now, we can move on to more Zoom meetings, you know, coming up with organizations and meetings that we can actually participate in, and also look into those events to see what interest we have in tabling. So I think that would be our next steps for this. And Gretchen, if you can send those events again when you get more information, I think that would be helpful for every commission.
Thank you, I will.
Yeah, thank you. If any other concerns, questions on this, on 4E? Okay, hearing none, I think we move on to our task force and project updates. And that is 5A, that's awareness, and that is Kathy.
Hi, everyone. So our big item right now is the discrimination survey. Marianne Bradshaw from Western Oregon University came to the task force meeting in March and talked a little bit about the process, the overall process and timing of that. And then Gretchen and I and Linnell Wilcox attended the class on, I think that was last week, recently, to share information with the students in the class about the Human Rights Commission and kind of what benefits, how the survey benefits our work. So they're working on it. It's going to open at the end of this month. We will probably have a chance to preview the final product before it gets out, to provide comments on the questions and to make sure it reads okay. It'll close in early May, and then the plan is, I think, to have them report back to the full Human Rights Commission at our June meeting on the results of that. The other thing I was going to mention is that on March 31st, a communication went out on the city's through the city's channels regarding Transgender Day of Visibility that Jakerico wrote. And so that was our March communication. We will probably focus our communications for April and for May on the discrimination survey, just to make people aware of that and get the link out and shared so people can respond to the survey. And then those were the main points that I remember from our last couple of meetings. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, Kathy, what are we doing to promote the survey? I know that every year when media gets the survey results, there's always people commenting, well, I didn't know about this. This survey just represents a couple of targeted people, which is not true because it's open to everybody. And so how are we promoting this?
That's something that we talked about with the class, about having more ways to get it out in the community and to get more representation from the community, not just to get responses. We talked about the people who don't feel like they just experience discrimination tend to feel like, well, I'm not the one that you want feedback from, so I'm not going to respond to the survey. So we talked about a couple of different, getting it spread more widely through the media, and also encouraging anyone to take it, as long as they're a resident or work in Salem, and they have to be over the age of 18 or 18 or over to take it. So that's something I think the students are going to work on that. I know, Gretchen, I think you had some ideas too about how to get it out there more widely. So yeah, we'll I don't know if that answers your question specifically, Angela, but it is an issue that the students were going to look at and we'll talk about before it actually goes out.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always because I always hear people, and maybe it's just because they want to be malicious, but they always say, this isn't representative of the city. They just targeted a couple of people, and that's why the results are like that. And I just want to be clear, the survey is open for everybody. As long as you live here or work here, it's open to everybody. Feel free to answer truthfully what you believe. But again, just to make that clear, it's open to everybody. I don't want it to. I want to spread misinformation that we're just targeting certain people, because that is not true. And that's something I see every year when a news outlet promotes the result of the survey. I always hear, no, you just guys targeted a specific part. This is why the results are bad, which is not true. It's not. It's just because you didn't take it. So please take it next year and tell us your feedback. We're open to everything. Any other questions regarding awareness or the survey? Okay, thank you, Kathy. And hearing none, I think we can move on to 5B, which is Equity Ask Report, and that is Gretchen.
Yes, I brought just one update today, and that's for those who might be monitoring the city council meeting that was Monday night. The council voted to direct staff to explore releasing a request for qualifications or request for proposals around the mobile crisis response unit. And so those steps will be taken to come up with those kinds of documents and then release those to see who might be interested and available as a service provider and what those costs might look like. But other than that, I didn't get a chance to gather additional information or receive other reports. I was gone for a chunk of the month, but I wanted to bring that update tonight in case you hadn't seen that.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. And is that recommendation to actually start the development of the mobile crisis unit?
This is Gretchen. Angelo, I couldn't hear one of the words of your question. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, is the motion the start of development of the mobile crisis unit, or is it just research? Or what does the motion mean?
Thank you. Yeah. It asks the city to explore what it would look like to release a formal ask to the community. So it might help to understand the city itself doesn't anticipate operating the service. The city would anticipate a provider with expertise in health and behavioral health outreach to provide the service. And so a request for qualifications or request for proposal document is what council asked the staff to explore preparing, which would create a formal way for potentially interested providers or organizations to raise their hand and say, hi, I'm here and I would have the following qualifications. I would need the following budget in order to achieve the following objectives. It kind of lays out exactly how that could look. So it's a step towards getting that information.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. I just wanted to be clear on what that actually meant.
Yeah.
Any more questions on any of the Equidash report? All right, hearing none, I think we move on to our LGBTQIA plus intersectional rights task force, and that is Trey Carrico.
This is Tricarico. Thank you. So we're continuing to work on our safe spaces project. We had all these great ideas and I'm not remembering, but I know that one was that we kind of wanted businesses or entities who participate in the program to do like some kind of pre-work or some kind of indication that they were really committed to the program, right? For those who are new, the Safe Spaces program is essentially a way to work with Salem businesses and entities. So we'd like the city to partner. We talked to Parks and Rec, for example, in making sure that our public spaces and our businesses are welcoming and affirming to everyone, members of the queer community, people of color, Black, Brown, everybody. So part of that project is offering like resources and training. And we also wanted to make sure that there are some specific sort of tenets or guidelines that the businesses partaking in this agree to. Some of that would be things that they can do, during their time. Some of them were things that they would need to do ahead of time. So we kind of landed on having kind of a list and then they could choose a certain number. So if say there was 20 things on the list, we want to see, 5 of these 20 things before you join our program and then working towards obtaining the others, right? So these might be like, having people wear pronoun pins or inclusive bathrooms or training your staff on how to react to, an unsheltered customer who's having a mental health crisis without calling the police and making it worse. Which will be really exciting when we have that mental health unit in place, because that'll be a great resource to point our businesses to. So we're looking at ways to try to meet the businesses where they're at, but also really create goals so that the businesses can improve on making their property or their restaurant or whatever welcoming to everyone. And then we're also working on a decal so that people walking around Salem could look at a business and see this decal and know, hey, this is a place that's going to be safe and affirming for me. And our hope is to have some like local artists in creating that decal. So that's kind of where we're at. I would ask Gretchen if she could chime in, but she wasn't there. So hopefully I captured it all.
Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Trey Carrico. Any questions regarding the Safe Spaces project or anything else?
Sorry, the interpreter's having. Okay, now I'm on mute. Sorry, go ahead. Okay, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your hard work that you've done on this. It's really been amazing and the community really needs this and it will really benefit from this. So I just wanted to thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Krista, for being there and listening to our ideas to make sure that we're including of everyone. And I would welcome anyone else to join us, especially new folks, if you want to help us with this project. It's going to be a really big project. It's really exciting. And I really appreciate the commission's support in getting this going.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Trey Carrico and Krista, for your work. I know it's difficult, it's hard, but we'll get this project going. It's I know it seems like we've taken our time, but it's because we want to perfect it and we want to do this the right way. And so, yeah, thanks for all your hard work. Any other concerns or questions? Okay, hearing none, I think we can move on to our staff updates.
This is Gretchen. Thanks, Angelo. I had received a suggestion of whether it would be helpful and interesting to people who were thinking about applying to serve on the commission to receive a position description from the perspective of members of the commission. And I hope you'll forgive me. I'm having a bit of deja vu and I'm worried we might have talked about this at a subcommittee or at another meeting, but at the risk of repeating, I just thought I would throw that suggestion out there in case any of you were inspired to write up phrases or words or thoughts from the perspective of serving as a commissioner that you think would go into a position description. I'd be happy to kind of pull together your notes and add some notes and kind of start formatting one for your review and input. But it would be used as a tool when you and we and I are communicating with people who are contemplating serving. Might be a neat tool for, Joaquin and others who are like, what is this and what would be expected of me if I joined up? So something like that. But that's the only staff update that I have. And I also don't have anything to say on the community calendar. I know it was a written document that we shared, but don't have anything to add on that.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. And yeah, certainly I'd be happy to provide a few words on how it is to serve and all of that, on the perspective of being the chair and all that. So, and I welcome every other commissioner to do that as well, because I think everybody has different perspectives. And Gretchen, do we have any updates on, I know we were discussing whether to move in person or Zoom or hybrid. Any other updates on that, or is that still in progress?
Afraid not, still in progress. People are contemplating if it works to open boards and commissions prior to city council. City council has some sound issues in the council chambers. If it should happen all at once, if there's variance in our conference rooms around the city as to whether they're good accommodators of hybrid environments, for example. So not yet, that's all still being thought through. So for now, we're remaining online in a virtual format.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you. I know last time we kind of talked about it, and I think we were mostly in agreement that virtual is the right way for now because it's inclusive and it gives everybody a chance to participate. And then we were talking about hybrid, which does the same thing as well, because you can participate in person or virtual. But then I think, as you said, there was an issue with maybe not being able to do hybrid and choosing between in person or Zoom. And so I think it'd be beneficial if we knew, where the city was going so we can be prepared. And I think, Kathy, did you have a comment?
No, I did not. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, any member remarks and or announcements?
I do have a question, Angela. Sorry, this is Kathy.
Go ahead.
Do you know, have we made any progress in maybe getting a youth member or recruiting a youth member?
Gretchen, you're muted.
We do have an applicant from a person who would qualify.
Good. I would like to see someone representative of that community on the commission. I attended something earlier in the month that was sponsored by the school district talking about how students feel whether they belong or not. And the statistics were quite disturbing that I think it was like 2/3 of, no, I had that reversed. 1/3 of secondary students feel like they do belong at their school, which is not a lot. And so if there are things that we can be looking at for that community too, I think that would be very good.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, and Gretchen, it's okay if you haven't had a chance. I know there's a lot on your plate, but have you talked to the youth? I think it's youth coordinator for the city. You said that we might be able to promote this position to the schools directly.
I did, and actually that's the origin of the position description concept. As she thought about bringing this idea forward to all of her contacts and relationships, she thought, you know, people are going to want to hear authentically from people who are on the commission about what this means and what it's like. And so her advice back was, can you try to generate some sort of document like that? I'm sorry, when I mentioned that a moment ago, I didn't remember to link that together, but that's actually the origin of the idea. It was from our youth development coordinator, who, in her view of decades of working in this area, thought that would be a really important step. And then in the meantime, we received Joaquin's application, so that was pretty cool. But we, so yes, in short, and we have lots of relationships and connections. And so as she looked at our website and at the information we have, she made the suggestion of this additional piece that she thought would help make that outreach more successful.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, thank you, Gretchen. I think I can certainly speak to that and again, put a few sentences. I mean, I did join as a high schooler and actually did become chair as a high schooler too. So I think it's important that we do that. And then Joaquin, if you don't mind, how did you hear about the commission? Because I think that's another thing that was an issue that not a lot of young people have heard about the commission.
Yeah, so I'm a young person, but not a high school student. I haven't been in high school for a number of years, but I will be returning to Salem soon. My time is ending in college, and I'll be returning. And I was looking for ways to serve the community, and I was for many years an immigration rights organizer. And spearheaded a number of major political campaigns. And I was the executive director of a nonprofit in disability justice for the last 3 years, and I work actively in a lot of different areas. And my service will not end because in my new chapter of my life. So I'm forecasting ahead, and that's how I came to find the commission, was just looking for opportunities to serve the community. But I didn't hear about it from anybody in particular. And I qualify for the youth commission or position because of my age. I happen to be on the younger side for a college student. But my ward is representative, if I'm not mistaken. Ward 8 has a commissioner, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the rationale for me. But yeah.
This is Kathy.
Comment.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Christy here. I just wanted to thank you for coming tonight and learning more about the commission. It's been nice to hear about your background, and we're really thankful that you came and joined us.
Thanks for having me. Good to meet you.
I was going to follow up with your comment that we discovered at one of our recent meetings that we as a commission are overly representative of certain parts of Salem and not other parts of Salem. So don't let the fact that there's somebody else from your ward on the commission stop you from applying, because that's not been a problem for the rest of us. So.
Yeah, Angela here. Yeah, and we can certainly use more youth voices in the commission. I'm currently the lonely youth member, quote unquote, because I'm not technically part of that. The part of that as a commissioner, but I do fit into that group. And so, yeah, don't let that discourage you from, applying and joining. But yeah, that's what I think I discussed last time, that, for me and Joaquin, we actually looked for these opportunities. Nobody told us, about it. And so I think that was my other thing, was how do we promote it so that people don't have to go look for these opportunities, because, people don't often have the chances to look, or they don't know where to look. And so I think that was my main thing of how can we promote this. Okay, so all right, any other member remarks or announcements? Okay, and looks like we're actually reaching our end of the meeting, 7:30. So if no other remarks, I think this meeting is adjourned, and I hope everybody has a good night.